pleasure to be with you again. As Sharon mentioned, my name is Gene Taruso, and I am the artistic director at Steel River Playhouse in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I don't know how much any of you may know about Steel River. We're located on East High Street in Pottstown. We are very, very proud of what we're accomplishing, not just as an arts organization, but also in really being in the vanguard of the revival of Pottstown's downtown business area. We have an incredible facility. I spent 15 years as the director at the University of the Arts Conservatory for theater training. And so I know the Philadelphia scene very well myself, also a native. And I look around Philly and I say, boy, there might not be 3 or 4 facilities, theater producing organizations in town that have as nice a facility as we do. It allows us to provide a very, very active and vigorous educational program for the youth of Pottstown, Collegeville, Phoenixville, Spring City, that whole surrounding area. We have summer camps and an incredibly active production program. We do 8 shows a year, 4 in our subscription program, 4 in our studio series, because we have 2 different performance spaces. And we serve an incredible group of communities. We're very proud to be one of the few theaters in the area that dedicates at least one offering each year to the African American community for Black History Month. And we also offer not only a dedicated children's show each season, but also performance opportunities. In selecting our season, we're always looking for titles that may allow students who have studied in our programs, our educational programs, to also participate on stage. That was why I was so excited to work with The Sound of Music. I had 7 incredibly talented children that I think really won the hearts of the audience even more so than some of the adult actors. We are also, boy, I'd have to go a long way to find another theater program in the southeast Pennsylvania area that has such a dedicated program for seniors. We have our senior theater project, which mounts 2 shows a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. It is usually devised work. Sometimes it's sketches, little one-acts, good deal of song. It seems like most of our seniors want to sing. And we're very, very proud of that. So in our interaction with Pottstown and the outlying region, we like to think that we're a really terrific neighbor and community member in that we serve so many different audiences. The show that I'm going to talk to you about today actually falls into line with 2 of those groups. The Tri-County Chamber of Commerce has an organization called Women at Work, or Women of the Workforce. And they made a special point of wanting to come and see Court Marshal at Fort Devens because it deals with a true story about women trying to find their way within what had previously been an alien community. It also happens to be our February production, which is part of African American History Month. Let me get right to the presentation, and also let me see if my remote works. There we go. All right. First, something about the playwright. Thank you, Sharon. I think that does help. The playwright is Jeffrey Sweet. Jeff is an incredible member of our contemporary American theater community. He is a playwright, a screenwriter, a lyricist, a critic, a journalist, a teacher, a theater historian. He has been for many years a resident member of Chicago's Victory Gardens Theater, which is an important point because Victory Gardens does an awful lot in terms of the development of new plays. And one of the shows that they premiered was Court Marshal at Fort Devens. He's worked with virtually everybody in the industry. Some of his collaborators have been Helen Hunt, Ed Asner, Jack Klugman, and Melissa Manchester, with whom he adapted a musical called I Sent a Letter to My Love. His play, The Value of Names, which as you can see both Ed Asner and Jack Klugman have done, is really an incredible piece. I am sure that many of you remember the period of the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings and how they investigated Hollywood and show business. And The Value of Names is an amazing piece where a young woman who was an actress finds herself in a position with the opportunity to work professionally with a director, a film director, who just happened to have given her father's name 20 years ago to the House Un-American Activities Committee. So the tension and the conflict in that play is really tremendous, and it makes for great drama, and Jeffrey is a wonderful user of language. So Klugman toured in the piece. Ed Asner also did the piece. Helen Hunt did the piece. And it's probably his best known work and a very, very compelling story. Just a little bit more on Jeff. He is a columnist for Dramatics Magazine. He wrote the authorized history of two true American iconic theater institutions. One is Chicago's Second City Improv Troupe, which you may or may not know has yielded at least 80% of the cast members for Saturday Night Live since it was first initiated. And he has also written the definitive history, commissioned to do so, for the Eugene O'Neill Theater Institute, which is another one of our greatest sources for generating new American plays up in Connecticut. He's also done 2 textbooks on playwriting, and his work has been anthologized in 2 volumes, probably the best-selling of which is The Value of Names and Other Plays by Jeff Sweet. He's a council member of the Dramatists Guild of America, a member of Off-Broadway's Ensemble Studio Theater, and a past member of New Dramatists. Among his awards are the Writers Guild of America Award. He wrote for One Life to Live for many years, a Peabody Award, and an Emmy nomination for Pack of Lies, an Outer Critics Circle Award for Best Book and Score of a musical adaptation. He adapted Mary Shiskel's Love. Los Angeles' Ovation Award for Best Play for The Value of Names. Chicago's Joseph Jefferson Award for Best Play for Flyovers. And I just wanted to mention very briefly, some of you may have recently seen, about a year ago or so, I'd say, a Meryl Streep movie called August Osage County. How these things are quantified, no one can really say. But August Osage County has generally been given an acknowledgement as the most important American play that's been written since Angels in America back in the early 1990s. And I just thought it was worth mentioning that Court Marshal at Fort Devens finished second to August Osage County for Best New Play for the Joseph Jefferson Award the year that came out. So that's a little bit on Steel River and a little bit on the author, Jeff Sweet. I will also mention, in the event that any of you live closely enough or are interested, Jeff will be coming out to visit us. He's going to be talking with our audiences on a talkback after opening night performance. But the very next afternoon at 2 p.m., which would be February 7th, Saturday, he is going to perform his own one-man show called You Only Shoot the Ones You Love. And it's about oh, I'm sorry, that's inaccurate. That's Saturday, 2 o'clock matinee on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So we're sort of marketing Valentine's Day with You Only Shoot the One You Love as, a singular idea. And we're looking forward to having him with him. He's a good friend, and it'll be good to have him with us down in Pottstown. What is Court Marshal at Fort Devens all about? I had mentioned previously that the Tri-County Chamber was bringing a group of their membership, their women in the workforce membership, to see the show. It couldn't be a more appropriate piece for them to come and watch. It is based on a true story of a group of African American women who, toward the end of World War II, in an effort to improve themselves, choose to join the Women's Auxiliary Corps. And this is just a very brief glimpse at the opening scene. The story is told somewhat in flashback, And this is where they are meeting their commanding officer, General Kimball, in what is kind of a tense introduction. The story then flashes back to Ginny, the primary character in the play. And by the way, these production shots are not of our show. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Kaplan Performing Arts Center in Philadelphia, but when that opened a few years ago, Court Marshal at Fort Devens was actually the show that was chosen to open the space. So I thought that was another feather in the cap of the show. Some of you may recognize Johnny Hobbs on the right, who is arguably the best actor in the city of Philadelphia, born and raised. He played Ginny's father in the show. So obviously Ginny has to convince her dad that going off to the service is a good thing to do, and that she will not be at risk in what is largely a white man's world. Dad has concerns, but it's always time for a good parent to let the child go, and so he does. What Ginny finds when she gets there is not unusual for any GI, really. She finds that even though she may have assumed that she would be with people of like mind, African-American women who wanted something better, they're from all over the country. And some of them may be a little more rustic, a little more rural, maybe not as well-educated as Ginny. And there are resistances. This gal all the way on the, I guess, on your right, no, your left, is Johnny May. And the gal on the right is Gertrude. Now, one thing that you will see when you come to see the show at Steel River, the show is done as an ensemble. Only Johnny May and Ginny, those two characters on the left, are played by only one actress, okay? One actress goes through the entire play doing those two roles. Everyone else in the cast plays multiple roles. And the gal who's all the way on the right has a really interesting challenge as an actress because she plays both one of the women who joins the protest that will evolve in the storyline of the play. She also plays another one who kind of caves in and commits an attempted suicide. So that's an interesting kind of challenge for an actress to bring an audience along truthfully while playing such disparate characters. Ginny then also confronts her superiors, her immediate superiors, not the general that we saw in the first scene. And she finds some interesting things. She finds that the woman who is her immediate superior and is a white lieutenant is something of a mentor. She's not easy on Ginny, but she's trying to tell Ginny where the traps are, where the pitfalls are, and she tries to protect her in that regard while not giving up on any of the discipline. On the other hand, the African-American superior that she has is very much engaged in making sure that the military higher-ups will recognize her value as an officer, specifically so that other African-American women can also move up in the ranks. And in order to do that, she actually takes something of a tougher line on Ginny. This is the crux of the problem in the play. The women are trained as medical technicians. And you see Ruby here, the actress who plays Gertrude and Ruby, doing some foot repair on this GI with Ginny looking on in the background. But when they report for work, what they are assigned to are domestic tasks. And of course, this is something that understandably is an irritant for the young African-American women who expected more and trained long and hard because they expected more. Just so you're not distracted by this, in that production at the Kaplan Performing Arts Center, those banners of red and white that hung straight down were very sheer fabric so that light could reveal the actors behind those things, so that there might be psychological things going on behind the shears while the forefront of the stage had other action going on. Is that clear, or is that too wayo? Okay, good. Well, eventually Ginny decides, I've got to bring this issue forward. You know, it needs to be said that we trained for these positions, and all we are being used as are domestics. And you know, it feels like there might be some kind of racial resonance in there. Without going too much further, I think you can tell by the look on the actor's face, who also happens to be Tom McCarthy, another one of Philadelphia's finest actors. He's had a film and stage career that goes back decades, that the general does not agree. That is, again, the African-American officer Stoney, who's just standing to Ginny's right, and she has escorted her to the complaint, but is not necessarily being helpful in the process of the complaint being filed. Ginny tries to go another way, and I love that Jeff Sweet put this into the play. It's a wonderful, wonderful wrinkle. In order to try and deal with her frustrations, in order to try to make sense of things for herself and see if she can be productive in another way, she signs up for work in the motor pool. And what Jeff gives us there is a very sympathetic white character, a guy who understands her. Obviously, he is also, in the end, bound to follow the orders that he has been given. But there's a real empathy between the two characters, and he trains her as best as he can, and he welcomes her fully and gives her real responsibility there. And it's a scene that I really enjoy very, very much. Obviously, as Ginny starts to consider what her options are, she writes home, both to reassure her dad and also to get advice from him. And this is another scene where you can see the actor in the shears behind the banners being lit from the rear as Ginny writes the letter home. The decision that they have to wrestle with is, hey, you know, if we just don't do the work, since no one will listen to us, since no one will take our complaints forward, maybe our only option is just refusing to do the work. And what happens then? You get court-martialed. And they feel that that might be the only way that their argument can be heard. A very, very courageous take, and maybe it would be a good thing for me again to remind you at this point that this is all based on a true story. It is all based on a true story. It actually occurred. And unfortunately, even the NAACP does not feel that they are in a position to help the young ladies because they feel it's wartime. And they have to stick, you know, with the government and the war effort. They don't want to set the civil rights movement back any by seeming to be resistant. And so the only person that they can get to help them is a young lawyer who has never tried a court-martial in his life. And so this scene is about their deciding how to go forward or not. Just a scene between the prosecution and the defense lawyer. Again, you may notice that the prosecution lawyer is being played by the same actor who was in the motor pool. Just a kind of glimpse at how ensemble work plays out. And although they are very friendly on a professional level, the scene is really kind of a macho encounter as to, I'm going to beat you in this way and this way, and I've got the case and you don't, et cetera, et cetera. One of the most riveting moments in the entire play is the testimony of Stoney, her African-American superior, because she has to come to terms with what she owes the greater allegiance to. And it is just a riveting scene and a very emotional one and a tough one because the prosecutor has to really kind of press her to reveal what she knows and what she has seen. And I won't tell you the way that scene plays out because I don't want to ruin the play for you, okay? This is simply a scene where the prosecutor and Johnny May and Ginny are considering where they are as they await the verdict. There is also another scene where the two girls take the information back to their prison cells and consider what they might do, what their next steps might be, if there is some compromise that can be reached. And a wonderful scene taken again from actual transcripts of a local African-American minister who basically takes his sermon on one of the days of worship and just sets it aside and says, with spirit goes hand in hand morality. What is the moral stand to take here? Where do we stand? And tries to move his congregation by virtue of that. I will not tell you how things play out, but some of you who may have a sharp sense of history, or at least might recall what happened shortly after you were born, shortly before you were born, excuse me, might recall that it was almost at this time that President Truman said, hey, this is crazy. We can't ask people to go out there and fight for the country and keep them segregated. And he desegregated the armed forces. It happened very, very shortly in the wake after this trial. And I think that's all I'm going to say about the plot, because I don't want to, just serve as a spoiler alert. And there's that. One thing that you may want to see, again, these shots are from a previous production, but there was a video that was done of when the production was first mounted. You'll need to ignore some of the things about the Kaplan performing. No, Sharon, it's probably better for now to keep it off. There are some things in the video that you're about to see that make reference to the new Kaplan Performing Arts Center and its relationship to the University of the Arts. You can ignore that. But there are some interviews with the actors and the playwright and the director that may be of some interest to you, so I brought it along just in case. Theater's exciting when it takes us to places we haven't been before. And that's another one of the things that I love about this play and that I think our audiences are going to enjoy very much.
You think your memory's better?
I do remember what I said.
All right. Let's hear it. Let's hear your version. When she ordered you to go back to work, what responses did you make to your superior officer?
I was working on an idea about the American occupation of Germany and was researching a story in New York Herald Tribune from March 1945. And there was a little two-paragraph story at the bottom of page 14 which said, 4 colored girls to be tried for mutiny. And I said, hello, I want to know the end of that. You know, this is 1945. And so I just, there were very scant details of this in the white press at the time. But then I went to the Schomburg Center, which is the center that the New York Public Library runs with black newspapers and history and so forth. And they had this as a front page story for much of the time. And it was just a compelling story about these young women who challenged a racist colonel.
These particular women take a stand against in terms of what they want to be treated like, how they want to be valued. And so they respond to that and they take a court-martial, and ultimately there's a big decision made relative to if they're going to be a part of the military or not part of the military. So it's about people really taking a stand, really seeing a value in themselves, and it's based on true accounts in history, you know, richly developed and researched by Jeffrey Sweet.
I'm sure that John will say this too.
Yeah.
When you're in the Army, like he was and I was, you know, you're in the Army, you're intimidated, man.
Yes.
You're in their court. And when you go to court-martial against not following an order, during wartime,
yes,
there was a death threat held over you. It gets very intense with the situation with these girls that have decided to take that stand.
Right.
They were putting up a lot to do that.
Taking quite a risk.
Yep.
We all play such a great part in showing the story individually of the WACs and where people are coming from, people that are against the strike. You know, some of the WACs didn't want to mutinize. They thought that Jenny was crazy because death, you know, just because you don't want to mop and clean floors is kind of crazy to some people back in the 1940s, especially in the times of war. So I feel that all the characters in the show dynamically just are fit in such an area where it blends very well, where it just kind of just seamlessly, there's a lot of scenes in the show, and it just flows, and you really understand what's going on.
It moves very quickly from a scene to another scene without a sort of an official scene transition break. There are many short scenes, and as it's written, the flow of the play just jumps back and forth through time and from place to place. So being able to have actors just stand up and put us into a new location with a few lines is going to be very effective in this production for changing the feel and the setting. We did try to arrange the audience to serve as an analog to a jury or to the audience even in a courtroom. And with that in mind, I've eliminated audience seating on the floor around the three-quarter thrust and put a railing there on the front of the audience risers to sort of echo courtroom architecture and set up that kind of dynamic.
She's going to have to testify like an officer. She's going to have to say how we disobeyed her, Lawson, and the others.
So I graduated in 2003, and I remained in Philadelphia. And it's been a very interesting experience. I think for everybody, it's obviously very different. I think for me, I found that the adjustment to the real world was a lot more than I expected it to be. But, you know, I really just got on myself about working hard and pounding the pavement and doing what I had to do.
There is a real good exchange that happens between the students and us. And what you find out ultimately is that you're still a student as well. I mean, you're still learning,
always.
you're still picking things up. You pick things up from them, they pick things up from you. So it's a good relationship.
The play takes place in the Army, you know.
Right.
In the Army, there's an old saying, OJT, on-the-job training. That's right. And for the younger folks in a piece like this, when they do work with somebody that's been around the block 80, 90 times, I think it's most beneficial for them.
I got the training from these men, and now I can consider myself on par and on level with them, and I think that's exciting, and I think that it's a rewarding feeling.
For those of you that are going to the show, and for the performance that you are scheduled for, which I believe is the 8th, is that correct? Sunday afternoon, the 8th, there are a limited number of seats left. Yes, I absolutely want to take questions. What can I
do you mix equity actors with them?
We do at times. In this particular show, no. But Steel River does hire equity actors. It all comes down to the role, the need, the production. Yeah. And we are looking to do a little bit more of that going forward.
Do you have your own shop?
Yes. That's an interesting question. Why did you ask if we have our own shop? It's a small one, but we do have our own shop. We do build our own sets there.
That's what I was, and you have a scenic director.
Well, we have a technical director. We hire professional scene designers show to show to show. Yeah, all of our designers and directors we hire from the outside. I mean, I'll direct 1 or 2 shows a year myself, but the rest of the shows will be directed by outside directors. And, you know, our technical director might design 1 or 2 sets during the course of the year, but again, we mostly hire professional scenic designers to come in. Same thing with lighting designers, costume designers, and sound designers. I'm just fascinated as to, you know, usually the first question you get is about performance. So I'm intrigued as to why you were thinking in terms of the design end. Are you a designer?
No.
Okay.
I've grown up in the theater, so.
Ah, very good, very good. Yes?
And are there any tickets left for this performance?
Yes, as I said, the performance that you folks are scheduled for, which is 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, February 8th, there are still a few tickets left, yes.
And we get them from?
And it's a very intimate space. This show is being done in our upstairs studio space. We have 2 spaces, as I mentioned before. The downstairs space, depending on how we configure the seating, because it's a huge, wide open space, we can set up the seating any way we want, black box style. It can seat anywhere from 250 to 300 seats. Upstairs, the studio space is much more intimate, anywhere from, say, 80 to 120. Yes?
I also have a scenic design question because I'm curious about the shears and the action behind the shears.
Yes.
Is that the playwright or is that the
No, that
scenic
was my
designer?
decision.
That
That was my decision as director, yes. Yeah. And obviously, I wanted to draw from some of the psychological elements of the play, okay? The fact that she leaves a father behind, the fact that the specter, the intimidation element of the military is always there. And to do that, you need a very good lighting system. Okay, you need and that space had a very good lighting system. We were able to do rear projection and things like that. I believe, at least the last rehearsal that I saw, the production that you will see uses that idea in part, but goes in a different direction. What we did for that production, we only recreated the white and the red stripes in the flag. They have created essentially the entire flag. And although they do use it to conceal actors as they exit, they don't light through the banner. All these design questions, I'm fascinated. Yes?
Not design, but I heard the Fringe mentioned. Was that part of the Philly Fringe?
Yes, that was done with the Philly Fringe. I think that show was done about 4 years ago.
Do you know how Philly Fringe is funded? I mean, they've just built that new theater.
Well, a lot of it is obviously through the Pennsylvania Council for the Arts, and much of it, you know, doesn't need to be funded because they will include you in their marketing if you meet all of their logistical requirements, but you're finding your own space, you're finding your own budget to mount a show, you know? So I think the vast majority of those shows have to find funding on their own.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, like I remember I went to one Philly Fringe show where I had, Act 1 was in like a bar, in the back room of a bar, and Act 2 we had to walk around the corner to another bar. So a show like that, you know, you're not going to get the Pennsylvania Council of the Arts to fund that. You might get some help with marketing, but that show obviously needed to find all of its own resources. And so that's how that's how most fringe festivals work. You know, the great one is the Edinburgh Festival. Everybody's borrowing from that. And I know people who will throw a show together, fly over there and just do it. And I think the people who run the festival are barely aware of the show. But it's fun. It's a festival.
Yeah, they could be a little library room.
Yeah.
Great. But that's grown so much, that Philly Fringe.
It has, and that's why it's grown, and in its growth, it's been a great barometer for what I think is the maturing of the Philadelphia theater scene. You know, a lot of people, I spent a number of years in Chicago, and I was also bi-coastal for a while because I was president of the American Academy, which has a campus in Hollywood and in New York. So even though I was born and raised in Philadelphia, I was gone for 30 years. And when I came back, I was amazed at how vibrant theater had become in southeastern Pennsylvania. And a lot of people ask me why, what happened, what was the changeover. And I think it had a lot to do with the fact that we were the closest pre-Broadway city. So that when the idea of opening a show out of town, outside of New York, started to fall away, when that wasn't as common practice, the last place that they would still do it was Philadelphia, because it was a short trip up the turnpike. Changes, materials, all the rest, it was less costly. There was a downside to that. Because we were the last of the pre-Broadway towns, regional theater as an idea developed very slowly here. But in the end, a lot of the mistakes that were made by regional theaters that popped up elsewhere, Chicago, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Seattle, Toronto, we learned from that. And I think the demographic in Philadelphia is changing. I think Philadelphia was the only one of the top 10 cities, or the top 5 cities, that did not experience a loss in population in the last census, which was rare for Philadelphia because we had been losing population as far back as the 1960 census. And that meant that a lot of younger people were moving in, So theater was finding a new audience, because right now theater relies on the baby boom generation and people even prior to that to sustain itself, you know.
That's the one sad thing that I
Yeah.
think I see is
Yeah.
right now it's like everybody's my age or older.
Philly seems to be beating that. Philly
Yeah.
seems to be beating that, thank goodness. Yes,
It's
ma'am.
probably the most vibrant regional theater in the country.
I would absolutely
And
agree.
they also, the Ardent sends plays to Seattle, to Pittsburgh.
And to New York.
Yes.
And to New York. There's no question about it. You know, a lot of people will point to Chicago and say pound for pound, that's a more active theater. That's true, but there's more legitimate professional theater going on in Philadelphia than any other regional city in the country.
A lot of them live here and they bus to New York to try out for shows.
That is true, but we're also getting into a situation where a lot of them live here and just stay here, and very soon we may have a roadblock in terms of new talent getting opportunities coming up.
What's your schedule? What are the shows in your schedule?
I'm really glad you asked that, because there is something else I have for you here. I had it on my laptop. I don't know if I can access, let me see if I can access
You have a
our
website?
website so I could be very specific about
Do you
this.
have a website?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for here.
Okay, the question, if you couldn't hear it, was while Jean's trying to find it on there, could I talk about parking in Pottstown? And I'm happy to say on a Sunday afternoon, parking is great. If you can't come Sunday, either because they run out of tickets before you get them or because you have a conflict, the play does run for the next 2 weekends. It opens Thursday, it runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then again the following weekend. After class, I'll find out who else wants to purchase tickets. We'll make a call to the box office and find out what's still available. I know that they were getting close, but I don't think it's sold out yet. There's lots of parking on High Street. There's a bank parking lot nearby, and directly across the street from the theater, behind a building that was called the New Yorker, there is a lot of parking behind.
All free.
And it's all free. So it's free and easy. I'm not as good about the restaurant availability. I know that there's one on the corner of High and
There is a terrific restaurant virtually right next door to us if you're facing the building, and there are like two very narrow buildings to our left and then a tiny little street. I think it's Charlotte. That's not Charlotte.
Yeah.
It is Charlotte. And then right there is a terrific Juan Carlos Mexican restaurant. One block further down is Lily's, which has wonderful cuisine, really terrific stuff. That's BYOB. So yeah, there are restaurants right there, and for an afternoon, since you would be there for the matinee, directly across the street is Connections on High, which has, you know, little breakfast and lunch things, terrific pastries, and latte, and a really great place to relax and enjoy yourselves. But if you went to a 2 o'clock performance and you wanted to have a meal afterwards, dinner, either Lily's or Juan Carlos, which are both within a block, are right there. And
down on the bottom floor of the chamber. What's that one called?
oh, the Brick House.
And the Brick House.
Brick House is terrific. Yeah, great steaks. Great steaks. Yeah. Yes.
What is the price range for the tickets?
I believe for Court Marshal at Fort Devens, because it's an upstairs show, top ticket price is like $19, $20, something like that.
But ours for Sunday is $14 because we have a discount for the group. If you go Sunday, it will be $14. If you go on your own, it's whatever the box office is charging.
Okay, thanks.
And the tickets are reserved seating?
Yes.
Thank you.
They are, right? It's on the ticket. I'll look.
Yes, yeah, they are. Even upstairs, they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to take a quick look at our season, this is our website, Steel River Playhouse. I don't know how well you can see it there. www.steelriver.org. And let's go backwards. There's the mention of Jeff Sweet's one-man show, You Only Shoot the One You Love. And let's take a look at our current season. We're very, very happy with the way this season is unfolding thus far. I hope I can do this.
The season subscription plan that you just rolled at, can you get to that? Go down, season subscription.
There is one site where you can see everything, the whole season, but I'll try it. Well, this isn't exactly what I wanted to show you, but it is an overview. You can see that our main stage season was The Miracle Worker, The Sound of Music, Rumors, which is our next main stage show. I'm sure that many of you know Neil Simon, the author of The Odd Couple and Barefoot in the Park. Neil Simon, after Shakespeare and Henrik Ibsen, is the most produced playwright in the world. And he is certainly the most successful comedic playwright in American theater history. And he contends that Rumors, the show of his that we're going to be doing in March, is his only true farce. So I love that. I love that.
Somebody from Steel River will be here on March 9th to talk about that production.
Yes, yes. Then 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee is a terrifically inventive musical where basically you have adult actors playing the children who are going through the anxiety of preparing for a spelling bee and dealing with the authorities who run the spelling contest, and it's terrifically entertaining. A lot of audience participation too, so make sure you're ready to get it into the swing of the action if you come and see that. Our studio series, which Fort Devens is a part of, we opened the season with Shout, which was, again, a terrific celebration of women in that it was a musical review based on the music of female vocalists of the 60s. It was set in London, and it sort of traced the evolution of the women's movement from the mid-60s into the early 70s. And the songs were all by Petula Clark and Dusty Springfield and Lulu and Nancy Sinatra and a bunch of others. And our audiences really loved it. I mean, we had audiences rocking out to that show. Court Marshal at Fort Devens, which we've been talking about, is next. And then our last studio show of the year will be Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is an iconic piece, generally considered to be one of the 5 or 6 greatest plays in the American canon. And we're doing that in the round. So that should be a pretty intense encounter and a very up close and intimate exposure to the actors and the players. So I encourage you to come and see that as well. I guess we don't list dates here, which is really what I was trying to achieve in setting this up. Here, this is what I was looking for. This is what I was looking for. So Shout, and then The Miracle Worker, and now we're down to, we are also home to a resident theater company, Melange Contemporary Theater. They perform with us every year. And we do certain, outside bookings. The N Crowd Improvisational Comedy Group is with us every year. And our audiences really love the work they do. So Devens will be running through February 16th. Rumors will open March 12th and close March 22nd. Our senior theater project, if any of you would like to get a look and see what those folks are doing, is for 2 days, April 18th and 19th. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf runs from May 1st to May 10th. And Putnam County Spelling Bee, June 4th through June 14th. So now, I think if we have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer. How late do we go, Sharon?
Till 1 or 1:15.
Okay. All right. All right. Yes, please, Gus. That'd be great. Thanks. I don't, but I can tell you this. Sharon just asked me what the package is for the remainder of the season, but you can buy a remainder of the season package, which is the last 3 shows, the last 4 shows, because, yeah, Fort Devens, Virginia Woolf, Putnam County Spelling Bee, and Rumors. And if you purchase that package, admission is free to Jeff Sweet's one-man show on February 7th. 14th, thank you, Valentine's Day. I don't know, you know, I guess I'm just absorbed with opening weekend. Yeah, yeah. February 14th.
Are there any other questions for Jean? Well, I can't tell you how much this is a thrill to me because, as I said, I'm on the board, and we are so happy to have Jean bring his talents to us after a very illustrious career all over the country. So we feel like we have a real treasure. I'm not sure whether we're going to hear from Jean or somebody else on the staff for 2 other plays this season from Steel River, and I'm going to be passing out that schedule later. So you may see Jean or you may see somebody else wonderful from Steel River for Rumors and for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.